So it's nice to be back at Bub's, and it's a Monday night. I realize it's a sort of a special time to come together and reflect on the Dhamma. I give these talks in the spirit of the tradition that we're from, this forest tradition where the Dhamma talk is often seen as in a sense, a group meditation. And so just reflecting on practice, and the speaker reflecting on practice, inviting those listening to also reflect and take what's useful, and not to see it as something which you have to believe in terms of like a instruction or teaching in that sense, but more a shared way of looking into our experience, which is what my understanding of practice is really that it's a way of learning how to learn from your own experience in a particular way so that it leads to the end of suffering. This is the key interest of the Buddhist teaching. We have so many ways of living the Buddhist way of life, which also include, important but essentially peripheral sort of side interests, such as cultivating the moral precepts that are so essential to our practice, and the kind of benefit and generosity that we can have by trying to help others in our lives. So the Bub's Limbs project and all kinds of wonderful things we can do for and with each other. These are very important, and yet they're not unique to Buddhism. You'll find other traditions and other people all around the world who also find value in being good, in cultivating goodness. So the unique offering of Buddhism, the sort of what makes Buddhism Buddhism, has to do with this question of suffering and the end of suffering. And this word that we use in English, suffering, isn't really a great translation of the actual term, which is dukkha. And we don't have a good translation. But the way I reflect on it, in my experience, is it's more like a kind of structural stress, a sort of existential tension, which is always present and we don't normally recognize. So the kind of suffering we're talking about in terms of the Buddhist interest in finding happiness through freedom from dukkha is the kind of suffering that includes happiness. Right? That's confusing because normally we're saying, well, wait a minute, happiness is the opposite to suffering. But in fact, the dukkha talked about in the Four Noble Truths is it includes dukkha that's there when we have unpleasant experiences, when we feel depressed or we're injured or life's going the wrong way. We can easily see that that's dukkha because it doesn't feel good. But dukkha is actually also when we feel good, when we like what's happening, when we want more of it to happen, and we want to keep happening. The dukkha is there in the wish that it doesn't end, in the wish to preserve it, in the wish to have more. And that's not something that's easy to see. That sort of tension that's there by knowing that whatever we do find in our lives which is good is essentially unstable. It's vulnerable to change. We know that in our bones, and yet we're not conscious of it all the time. So the first noble truth is becoming conscious of this, like being willing to become conscious of it, sort of like just coming out of denial, like the first step in the 12-step program. Like if you have an addiction, in our case the addiction to desire and identity, the first step is to realize you have a problem. Wait a minute, there is a problem here. And it's not just the bad stuff, it's that even the good stuff it contains the seeds of suffering. Contains the seeds of grief when it ends, of not wanting loved ones to die or to suffer, not wanting our bodies to grow old. And these are things we hear, the teachings are quite obvious intellectually, but it's something else to really start to feel it, to understand it, to grok it, there's this English word, grok, which you kind of like really know it. And that's something which we're asked to do by the Buddha if we wish to be free from dukkha. And the more positive way to say it is if we wish to find a true happiness, a happiness which is really secure. It's not vulnerable in the way that, say, let's just call it smaller happinesses that we're used to, are vulnerable, right? Because the conditions will change, even if things are going wonderfully. We know at some point the conditions will change. We don't know when. So there's always a tension there. There's always sort of like an architectural, the engineering concept of because of gravity, there's load-bearing tension on this building, right? It seems like it's just here, it's stable, it's no problem, but an architect or an engineer would know, in fact, it's under tension right now. You take out one beam and the whole thing could just collapse because it's actually all under stress of some kind. It doesn't seem like it, but it is. In the same kind of way, it doesn't seem to us maybe like we're under stress if things are going well, but actually we are. There's something under there that we're not seeing. So First Noble Truth is really being willing to become aware of that, and not in a way that's like depressing, like, okay, now I'm going to even, life is hard enough, and so now I'm going to even spoil my happiness, my small happinesses, by calling them suffering too. But rather recognizing that, in fact, there is freedom from this that's possible. And that's, of course, the promise of the Second Noble Truth, where we see that the cause for this is not just something we have to accept as being part of the universe, it's something we're doing. We are actually causing this stress. And that's something which has to be really seen and understood and say, released. We have to stop doing that. And that's hard to see. So we have this whole tradition, which includes a lot of good works and a lot of wonderful aspects that it's shared with other religious traditions and other, say, spiritual pursuits and human pursuits. But this particular aspect that makes Buddhism Buddhism is one that's hard to see and it's hard to do. It really takes determination and commitment and what I would call willingness, because it's so easy to just not want to see, right? And so just to be willing to see, yes, there is a problem, and yes, it's something I am doing. It's the way that I am relating to my desire, my wants, my aversions. There's delusion going on, which is carrying me along with my habits, And so that's something I want to see. I want to see deeply, and it's hard to do that. So how do I do that? So then all of this sort of meditation business starts to make even more sense. Not just to de-stress, as they say these days, which is also a wonderful, beneficial aspect and kind of consequence of meditation. And we can take it just on that level if we wish. But if we want to take it more deeply, and truly, say, the way the Buddha intended us to practice, then beyond the calming effect that meditation can have, we want to have what's called insight. We want to be able to see really what's happening. And that, because that's hard to do, we need to set up, say, routines like this. It's why we have traditions. The robes aren't anything special in themselves, but they help with the practice that allows us to see better. And the rules, many of them, the moral ones are necessary for all of us, whether you're a monk or nun or layperson. If we do something that's harmful intentionally to ourselves or others, we're going to suffer, and we're not going to be able to have this kind of insight. It's going to be continually sort of obscured from us. And that's that. So any rules to do with say moral considerations are not optional. But a lot of the rules, say, the monastic life has, or even some shared for the lay people, and especially some of the the traditions, chanting books and vowing and all the different things we have, they're sort of beautiful ways, but they're arbitrary. They don't have to be here. There's nothing special in and of themselves. They're ways to give us structure so that we can, if we wish, commit ourselves to and engage in this difficult business of gaining insight into how am I causing suffering? How am I causing this existential stress, right? This tension that's always there. So what is that tension? We want to get interested in it. And that actually can be quite a relief. It can even be, I don't know if fun is the right word, but it can make life more interesting. Because sometimes we feel stuck in these situations where, okay, now I'm out of college, or, I have my family, I have my job, and here I am, and okay, now what's next? It's like many, many years and then the end. And so how, it can feel routine, I imagine. I know the monk's life can feel routine. But if we have this new interest in understanding, gaining insight into how I'm causing suffering in this moment now, then actually when things, are boring, when I feel aversion in any way, whether they're routine or not, whether they're painful or not, it's actually something which can teach me. I can learn from this. This too can help me gain insight. So how with this is suffering being created? And we start to see, as the Buddha taught, that it really has to do a lot with what we call tanha, or wanting, or craving. This basic I want, I don't want, that comes right from the very beginning. All of us have it, and we've manifested it in different ways. Once we become adults, we're very sophisticated about it. We feel all sort of civilized and so on. But it's a basic sense of like, no, or I want. And there's a delusion around that, which is very powerful. And so if we realize, okay, these forces are what I need to free myself from, and that means I need to see them, I need to become interested in how they're affecting me right now. How are they manifesting? Then I can use whatever right now is, whether it's interesting, it's actually better if it's boring. That's why we make the monasteries as boring as we can. Because you have enough to do with what is my mind doing with this right now, right? Rather than kind of distracting with, you have to kind of figure out a whole lot of other things. So you want to make it very simple. Meditation retreats are intentionally nothing going on. Don't read books, right? Take all the stuff away. Not because it's bad to read books, not because it's bad to do things, but because, and not just because you want to calm down, that's part of it, but because you really want to kind of clear the decks if you're interested in this, so you can not have to do anything other than use this moment to try to learn about where's suffering, how is it being created right now. And we can't just do that in an intellectual way, and we can't do it in say, let's say, as we start to engage in this, our insight starts at a very, say, surface level, and it starts to deepen. And we just have to wait. We can't immediately think, I'm going to solve it just by seeing it right now. But whatever we can see, even if it, in the end, is something that we see through that as well, it's starting the process. It's actually going against the stream, as they say. You're not going with the stream of the habits of wanting, not wanting, trying. I want to become the best person I can. I want to succeed. I want this. I want that. None of those things are bad, and we don't necessarily have to stop doing those things as long as they're not hurting anybody. But they are carrying us along in this stream of habit, which is simply, we're not going to have that insight unless we try to go against it. So we don't have to fight it by going against it, but we do have to try to just hands off, let go, and actually look in a different way. What's happening right now? Where's the wanting? What am I trying to push out? What am I trying to make go away? Whether it's internal, physical, I want to be healthy, I don't want to be sick, or what, I want my mind to be better than it is, I don't want to be this angry person, I want to be a peaceful, saintly person, right? So then the problem we think is that I'm not a saintly person, I'm an angry person, but in fact the problem is not that. Right in the moment, the problem is I don't want this, I don't want to be the way I am, I want to be a different way. So when When we realize that the wanting is the problem, the not wanting, not wanting, we actually can engage in a very useful, effective way with whatever we're feeling at any time, whether we're in a meditation retreat or not. We learn how to watch our mind, as they say. We learn how to learn through our experience, and we don't need to create special experience. We do need to make sure we're not doing anything damaging, so following the precepts is really important, not because we're trying to be holy or because, there are these formulated precepts with Pali words that came from the Buddha, but because of the principles, they're human principles. We're not intentionally killing, we're not intentionally stealing, we're not intentionally causing harm with our relationships, we're not intentionally lying or deceiving, and we're keeping ourselves sober. We're not just letting our kind of mind get carried away through drink or drugs. These are extremely important because they allow us actually to do this work and to keep ourselves from causing, bad, the kind of karma, the consequences, which are going to cause a lot of remorse and regret in the future. They'll come with us. And a lot of us, maybe at first, maybe for a long time, we feel, I can't practice because I've done this bad karma in the past, and here I am, I deserve to suffer. I feel the remorse. I wish I hadn't been bad to so-and-so back then. And that's understandable, but in fact, again, if we keep it to this present moment, what you're working with, the problem is not wanting to feel that way. And there is always the possibility, from this moment on, not to continue the bad habits that may have been there in the past. And there's also the opportunity, if we wish to, we can ask forgiveness of people. And whether they accept it or not is really, we can't control that. But we know that we can in our hearts forgive them for things they've done, and we can also ask for forgiveness for things we've done or we perceive we've done. And so we have this ritual, as many of you probably know, the asking for forgiveness when there's a parting of ways in the Buddhist tradition. And the idea behind that is that usually there's nothing to forgive. Nobody's done anything. But you still do this whole big thing about please, if I've done anything by intentionally or unintentionally, by body, speech, or mind, forgive me. And and it's a beautiful thing, and it also, it's a true spiritual principle, I would say, of kind of grounding one, like reaffirming to each other and to oneself the principles of my intention is not to cause harm, and if I did, even if it was accidental, I want you to know that that's really my intention. And so you're starting from this moment, whatever's happened in the past, with pure intention. And so that's what we're invited, I'd say, to really use as a practice method of watching the mind in the present moment. Well, what do I watch? Be very careful about where am I coming from? What's my intention here? There's our conscious intention, and as we watch, of course, many of us practiced over the years, and you get more mindful and you see, well, there's our conscious intention, and there's sort of a semi-conscious intention that I'm kind of fooling myself about, and then there's an unconscious intention I didn't even realize. It comes from my old karma and so on. So there's a lot going on, but we do what we can. We don't have to be perfect. So as much as we can in this moment, we realize, what am I doing in terms of causing suffering for myself, for others? Where is my suffering right now coming from? We don't have to use the word suffering. We can use this word dukkha, because it might be that things are really great right now, and then okay, well, where's the dukkha? I'm really hoping this stays this way. There's some dukkha there, and so it's not to say you have to change the things. It's great when things are going great, but if you want to use it as an opportunity to practice and not to suffer when they stop going great, because that's what happens, isn't it? Then they stop and you suffer, you go down. If you can let it go while you're up, you then, you realize, this is great, and it's going to end, and I totally accept that. And you can even enjoy it more because you're not clinging to it as much. And so, Ajahn Chah, we just had this wonderful Ajahn Chah Remembrance Day. It was 2 days, wasn't it? ACRD, should have been ACR2D, because it was 2 days of Ajahn Chah remembrance, and many wonderful stories, and the images, the simple images that people related he would come up with, if you pick up a heavy item, it's heavy, and if If you put it down, it's light. And so if we have an experience right now that we like, if we're clinging to it, we're picking it up. And even though we like it, it's heavy. If we let it go, doesn't mean it has to go away, but when it goes in its own time. It's light. And so we try to, I would say, engage with our experience, whether it's what we want or what we don't want, whether it seems to be fortunate or unfortunate, in a way which is light, where we're recognizing the intrinsic, wholeness of the mind, to use that phrase. We have satipanya, mindfulness and wisdom, to see that clinging to things, getting engaged in believing in our wanting and not wanting is causing suffering. And so there's the wisdom to relate to it in a wise way, not to pick it up, not to hold on to it. And yet we engage, we do what we have to do. It doesn't mean you have to stop trying to make your life better or anything. We don't have to just be a couch potato and kind of practice mindfulness on the couch forever and not doing anything, because that'll have its own bad consequences, right? We have relationships, we have lives, we have to engage and act as skillful as we can. But it is nature that we're part of. This is another theme, Ajahn Chah's teaching, and that in the forest tradition is really, we're out in the forest tradition. So we have these well, in Thailand, in Malaysia, they're called huts. But I can't really call our kutis huts. In New Hampshire, I have to call them kind of cabins, small cabins, because they have to have walls this thick and triple glazed windows and things like this. But small cabins, no electricity, no water, but heat. And basically using nature, out in nature, to reflect on the fact that we are part of nature and really seeing the living and the dying and the ups and downs of the chipmunks and the owls and the ants and the trees. Sometimes the trees are healthy, sometimes the trees are sick, and the weather comes and goes. Sometimes it's pleasant, sometimes it's not pleasant, and we're part of this too. Our emotions, they come and go, sometimes pleasant, sometimes not pleasant. Fortune in our life comes and goes. Sometimes it's healthy, sometimes it's not healthy. But where are we in that? Well, our body's part of nature, so we relate to it in the way that we relate to nature. We let it be how it is. We don't have to have this clinging need to try to make it last forever, just the most beautiful, most healthy, strong one it can be. Because, we can still do that, but if there's clinging, it's going to be heavy. You're going to suffer when it's not the most strong one, when the wrinkle comes, or whatever it is. And you suffer. And that's natural. It's not to get rid of our wanting, but it's how we engage with our wanting, how we relate to it. If we cling to it, if we believe in it, if we go with it, we suffer. If we realize, here I am, it's natural, I want to be healthy, I want to live a long time, I'm a human with other humans, I want to look nice. But you don't cling to it, it comes, it goes, it's light, you won't suffer as much. And the more you can let it go, then the less you'll suffer. And that we can see this for ourselves. And then what we can control, we can't control our bodies, we can't control the nature, we can control our intention, how we are with this moment. We do have a lot of agency there. We're not just kind of flowing along without any control. We have a choice we're making every moment. And so the choice that we try to learn to make is to be mindful, to be sensitive, to be attentive, to not cause harm, and to, that we have the opportunity, of course, to cause benefit, and that helps a lot, but to have insight, to really use this experience, this life we have as a human being. The Buddha wanted to give us the opportunity not just to do good works, but to have insight into that which makes us suffering, that which keeps us on this wheel that's continually going up and down, healthy, sick, young, old, birth, death. We actually have the possibility to see the cause. A cause is not some universal thing up in the sky that we kind of realize 15 lifetimes from now. It's something happening every moment. It's something we're doing to ourselves. It's a way of relating to our experience, which is causing the suffering. And when we are able to have insight into that, we realize, this is good enough. I don't need anything special. I don't need to be a monk. I don't need to be whatever I thought I needed to be. Just need to truly be willing to see this and to engage in this. That's a few words for your contemplation this evening.
Thank you, Venerable Ajahn Jayanto, for the inspiring Dhamma sharing. We shall now open the floor for questions.
Ajahn, generally people prefer not to suffer. They don't love suffering. But there's still a minority, a group of people who really enjoy or like suffering. Maybe to the extent they don't even know they are enjoying it, unknowingly. And this group of people, they love isolation, they love to be alone, not even to deal with the family members and so on and so forth. They always think that they deserve to be in that poor state of conditions. So how do we help this type of people to get out of that and convert to become a positive status?
Well, you can't really change other people. You can try, sometimes there's an opportunity to help, but the most effective way I found is if you change yourself, if you stop suffering yourself, others will start to notice, even if they don't know they're noticing. They'll kind of unconsciously pick up on it. So if you refuse to take it on the same sort of, to accept their framing of things, but not through judgment, but just, showing through example that you don't have to suffer with whatever those circumstances are. You can engage in a different way, then they can pick it up in their own time. I don't know the situation you're talking about, but generally speaking. No, but the thing is you can't, so wanting somebody else to not suffer is suffering. It doesn't mean you don't do your best. You can still, feed the hungry and kind of give therapy to the depressed or whatever you might want to engage in some compassionate help with. But if you're wanting them not to suffer, then you're making yourself suffer through that wanting. So I don't want, you understand what I'm saying. It doesn't mean that you don't in some way, it's a pure heart. We all don't want anyone to suffer. So that's compassion. But I mean the kind of clinging, you're making yourself suffer as long as they're suffering, so please stop suffering so I can feel better. We do that a lot. So you can help yourself at least by not doing that anymore as much as you can.
Thank you.
Ajahn, I would like to ask some questions on meditation. From my understanding, if we can get profound insights if we get into deep samadhi. When I'm going about my daily activities, I bring my mindfulness to as much as possible to whatever I do, and sometimes insights arise. But I'm just wondering whether if I can meditate and enter into deep samadhi, would the insights be more profound? Like for example, in I say 1 hour of sitting, I see what I think might be moments of samadhi, where the moments, the space between the thoughts where there are no thoughts, and it's just the feeling of deep concentration with no thoughts. But it's more like drifting in and out of those moments. It's not steady. It's like that, in and out. So I don't see that as deep samadhi. So I'm just wondering whether there's a need to practice differently so that the samadhi is stable? Or do I just continue to practice patiently and over time the samadhi will be stable?
Yeah, well, and there are different. When it comes to method, there are different approaches. So some methods will involve will give importance to certain kinds of states that we can develop when it comes to concentration, and other methods will be less focused on achieving particular results. It will be more about a sort of continuity and overall approach, which will include moments of samadhi, but also really be more about sort of bringing your entire life as much as possible into an even approach of mindfulness. And so the mindfulness itself, in a sense, creates a tranquility. So my own experience has been more with the latter. And so I would say that even if you are able to stabilize the samadhi that you're describing, whether or not it stays the way that you've just described or whether it stabilizes, either way, it's still important not to dismiss the opportunity we have all the rest of the time when you're not sitting in deep samadhi. So you keep it going throughout. And one of the benefits of the deep states is that, yes, you can have it opens some doors to some sudden insights. But the thing is, because they're dependent on conditions, sometimes those doors then close. And then you feel like, oh, I need to get back to that. And so that's the thing to be careful of, is not to dismiss ordinary experience, thinking, oh, samadhi was extraordinary, and then I had the insight, so I need the extraordinary experience to have the insight. In fact, insights can come when conditions are right. Sometimes there's an extraordinary experience involved with samadhi. Sometimes, very often, there's just ordinary experience involved. And so I see it as like cultivating a garden more than kind of having a particular approach that we're trying to get a particular result from, but rather a sense of like, you're trying to make sure the soil is right, so you're practicing kindness to yourself and kindness to others and generosity in your approach. There's nutrients in the soil, and the seed is in there, and it'll grow if you just make sure that you're taking the distracting elements in your life away from the practice, so you're not letting the weeds grow and take all the water, and you're watering it with your awareness. You're actually putting your interest and willingness to use your life as practice there, and it'll grow on its own. So the teachers that I've had and that I trust and the way that I've practiced is really to yes, practice concentration, and whatever comes, but really it's sort of a whole life approach of changing the our kind of relationship with not wanting to try to become or get something, but rather accept what is as it is, for what it is. And in that way we're learning to let go of our wanting and not wanting, as I'm phrasing it here. And that's just as effective, if not more effective, than deep samadhi states for many people, if you practice that way.
Hi, Ajahn. My question is that, as for lay people, what's probably the suitable way to have access to teachers if we have questions about meditation or Buddhism? In many cases where we don't have the kind of access where a full-time monk would have a dedicated teacher to reach out to. So, what would be your advice to us?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, my own experience was when I went to the monastery, at first I figured it was all going to be about the teacher guiding me every step of the way. And then I got to the monastery and they're like, okay, that's your bed over there, come to morning puja. And that was it. And it was just like, okay, I guess I got to figure it out. And then I could ask questions when I had an opportunity after the meal, maybe, or here or there. I was in Sumedho, but it was mainly just I was getting teaching the way everyone else was getting teaching. The guests there and so on. Just Dhamma talks were offered when they were offered. there were books to read, there was a sort of an ethos of practiced life that you were learning from, and that was the teaching. And so, again, it's sort of like with the samadhi question. There are many different methods and sort of approaches, and so there are some, even within the forest tradition, some more focused on, like, you find a teacher who's going to tell you exactly what to do. We all kind of have that vision, don't we? It's like getting to the cave in the Himalayas, and then the teacher in the loincloth says, "Finally, you have arrived," and it just kind of leads us through to enlightenment. You can watch that as a desire as well. So basically, some people are lucky enough. The thing is, even in those sort of situations where you have almost like a guru type figure in the Ajahn, the Kruba Ajahn in our tradition, a lot of the monks living with them don't get that. They're still, it doesn't guarantee anything. They might be getting just the right advice, but they're not able to hear it. And then in other sort of traditions of where it's not so personal in terms of like guidance, but it's more like you're in the milieu, you're receiving what everyone's receiving, and sometimes you really do hear it. So it's more for you. Are you ready to learn or not? And then when you are, you're able to, the teachings arise, whether it's in your own life or a book, or now you have so much. You could have a YouTube talk or something like that, and then somebody might come through, like this ICRD event, and you talk to one of the monks, and you just get this, oh yeah, and so it can happen that way. But like I say, that's been my experience and my approach, and you might find others who would say, if you really want to learn, drop everything and go to a good monastery and just follow the teacher until, and that's valid also. It's not the only way. So if you find yourself in a life where you can't do that, I'd say it's being willing to learn, like finding ways to learn and not. It's almost, there's too much available now. There's just so much. You can get confused because, you hear, there are all these good teachers and sometimes they seem to contradict each other. It's like this and this and this, and then you're just full of wichikicca, which is doubt. So then, my advice would be, if what you're doing is causing doubt, well then modify what you're doing so that it doesn't cause doubt, and then just deal with the doubt so that you're not getting caught up in it. And, there is enough out there to get good teaching, and then in terms of like developing a relationship with someone who inspires you, it might mean going to a monastery sometimes. And you can't do it every day, you can't do it every week, maybe you do it once a year if it's in another country. But that kind of effort, and there's a place for a sort of devotional relationship as well that can be really helpful, really useful. So it's individual, I'd say.
Thank you, Ajahn, and thank you for being here. I'm curious, on the flip side of that question, when we do feel a completion with a place or a teacher or something, but also very grateful but ready to kind of reduce the maybe number of people we're listening to, how do we do that in an honorable way? And what have you seen along the way with others?
How do we reduce the...
How do we kind of continue on and maybe start attending just one place or with one teacher, but for the people that we still feel grateful for, but maybe not attending in a regular way? Do we say something, or do we...
Oh, I see. Well, if they're good teachers, they won't take it personally. You might say something, but you don't have to. I think, I don't see myself really as a teacher. I just see myself as a monk. But I have noticed, like in the monastery, there are people you think, oh wow, they're really benefiting, you have a good relationship. And then after a while, they move on to something else. And just seeing that over decades happen with everyone, every monastery, every teacher, an abbot, and so on. I just think it's just a natural thing that happens. And so I don't personally take it personally when that happens. And I think they wouldn't either.
Perhaps can Ajahn explain a little bit more about how to apply wise attention yoniso manasikara into our daily practice, and how is that differing from mindfulness, sati? How do we apply? Thank you.
Well, we have these words, and they're useful, but they are just words. They're sort of they're symbols, and they're pointing to the natural capacity that we have for paying attention and learning, and so not the kind of intellectual learning, but direct observation, like we learn through meditation, and so any way that we can find, because our lives are so different, like some of you they're all similar out there, but I imagine you have very different lives from each other. Some are more quiet, some are more busy, some are more, you have more responsibility, some less responsibility, and so on. So you'll have a different situation you're working with, and it's always about keeping it in the present moment. If you remember that, you've got some mindfulness, because it's like, okay, well, what's this like? And right there, you're mindful. And yoniso manasikara, it's a word that we're talking about wise reflection, and you want to be observing what's happening in the present moment from the perspective of, like I was saying, like how is suffering being caused here? How is where is harm? Is there any harm being caused here by the way I'm acting or engaging with this? Is there freedom from clinging going on? So you don't have to ask it in the head, but it's more just a sense of like you have that sort of overall intention when you come into the present moment. Okay, what's it like now? What's it like now? What's it like now? And if we're just doing that, then it doesn't seem like we're doing much, but actually we're practicing mindfulness, and the more we do it, then it becomes more consistent. And then, in fact, it can become continuous over time. And there can be a real change that happens where you're like, they talk about the puru, or the one who knows, is sort of, like when we meditate, sometimes you get a sense of it, like you're watching yourself meditating. Like you're kind of, oh, I can watch myself. It's that becomes more real and more deep over time, even when you're using your ordinary life as the moments to kind of put together in terms of making that continuum. So it's just like, okay, now it's like this, and now it's like this, and now it's like this. You're not looking for anything, you're not trying to change, but you are practicing mindfulness, and you'll start to be able to see wisely. If you have this intention to be doing it for this purpose, the purpose of letting go, purpose of developing freedom from suffering. And it's a natural thing in my experience. So it's not so much something I have to kind of learn from a book or get in a particular instruction from a teacher. It's almost like you water the soil and the seed grows. You don't have to grow it or pull it up or anything. It's just like you start to pay attention like this, and you'll start to see things you didn't see before, and you'll start to get a sense of being the watcher of yourself. So for me, that's a sense of, it's like you watch yourself as you live your life, rather than just you be in it. And so that's the difference between mindfulness and not being mindful. Not being mindful, we might have concentration, we can really do a lot of things. Computer programmers have to really concentrate on the program and everything, but they're not maybe mindful because they're not sort of aware that they're doing it while they're doing it. So you want to have a sense of commitment to being aware of what you're doing while you're doing it. And it can be just one moment. It's not like you hear that and you think, okay, tomorrow, 100% of the time from now on. And you can't do it because the habit's just so strong. So it's just like, just think of it as just one moment, and that's enough. And then, okay, go ahead and be heedless for 780 more moments, and then one more moment. Okay, and it's not a ratio. It's not kind of I don't see it as a linear thing. It's like that one moment of mindfulness is much more powerful than 10,000 moments of heedlessness. Those things disappear; they don't really exist. But when you wake up, it's like you're waking up. It's like for me, it's like being in touch with reality or just being out of touch by being in the mind's creations. So you can use whatever you have in your life to help to be mindful, to help to be in the present moment. Your body is the best thing because you to learn to feel the sensations in your body, and wherever your body, it's always here. And there are other benefits that can come from that. But you can use other things. You can just like anything that takes you out of your mental world and into just a sense of like, okay, here I am. It's like this right now.